Okay, this is an example similar to question 3 in chapter 10. This question has to do with available chlorine in sodium hypochlorite. So a quick explanation of what that means. If you've done any reading in the chapter, hopefully you remember that chlorine gas is very dangerous, very inexpensive, but also very dangerous, actually deadly in large enough quantities. So one of the alternatives to using chlorine gas for disinfection would be to use something like sodium hypochlorite. And sodium hypochlorite is going to provide an equivalent amount of chlorine to chlorine gas, but at a much lower percentage. So you have to use a lot more sodium hypochlorite to get the equivalent disinfection properties of chlorine gas. So in order to compare the two, we use a term called available chlorine. So 18% available chlorine means that, of course, that that amount of sodium hypochlorite would be equivalent to 18% of that same amount of chlorine. So to solve the problem, if we have 30 pounds of sodium hypochlorite, or I'm sorry, if we need 30 pounds per day of chlorine, but we're going to use sodium hypochlorite instead, then intuitively we know that we're going to need to use more sodium hypochlorite. So with 18% available chlorine, we are going to divide 30 pounds by 18%, or 0.18. And if we do that division, we wind up with 167 pounds of sodium hypochlorite. So to make sure that you've done the problem correctly and that you know that you need to divide, if you think about it intuitively, again, knowing that sodium hypochlorite is much safer than chlorine gas, but that you need to use quite a bit more to get the equivalent disinfection properties. So if sodium hypochlorite is only, let's say, 18% as effective as chlorine gas, then if you think about the problem intuitively and set it up, you should hopefully be able to tell that you set the problem up correctly and that that's the right answer. If you know that sodium hypochlorite in this example is much less effective than chlorine, then it should logically follow that you have to use quite a bit more. And so quite a bit more than 30 pounds of chlorine gas would be, in this case, 167 pounds of sodium hypochlorite.